Okay, so good afternoon, everybody. Right now, 26 participants are here. So, in last session means in the last period, I faced an internet connectivity problem. So I couldn't connect you and I couldn't conduct a lecture. So I will update it today. Uh, we will start from the difference between the two scripting. Okay, we have already seen that there are two types of scripting. That is a client side scripting and server side scripting. Okay, just before that, yeah, all of you give your attendance in a chat box. Yes, all of you give your attendance in a chat box. Yes, now see client side scripting and server side scripting. Okay, these are the two types of scripting that we are going to study. We have already studied first revision of JavaScript. Okay, we also studied the features of JavaScript, means why we require JavaScript, where we have to use those we have studied already. Okay, but now here we are going to study that what is the client side scripting and what is the server side scripting. And with the difference, we also going to study what is the difference between the client side and server side. Okay, now see, here is the client side scripting. Yes, can you see the slide means a PDF document on screen? Yes, give me reply so that I'll start over here. Yes, can you tell me? Can you see the PDF slide on screen? Okay. So there are two types of scripting, server side and client side. So here we will see first the client side scripting. Okay, so here is the client side scripting. Now what is client side scripting? When we store any file on client, when we store any file on client, when we execute that file on client, and when we see the result on client, then it is called client side scripting. Okay, so there are three methodologies, three functions we can do on a client itself. That two students have raised your hands. Yes, anything, any problem with you? Yeah, Joshi and Mahima. Is there any problem? If you can't hear me, then log out and log in again. Yes, in this type, in client-side scripting, the script resides on client, means it stores on client, right? That can run on client, means it execute on client. So see these two sentences. The first sentence says that I'm highlighting these types. The script resides on client, and the second thing is saying that it can run on client. Okay, so to run and to store, both these things we can do on client. After the execution, whatever the result generate, that result we could see on a client. Okay, there is no interface, no single interface of server, so it is called client side scripting. There is no interface of server, everything is going on a server. You're going to store file on server, you want to save the file on you want to save the file on client, you want to open it on a client, you want to execute it on client, and you can see the result on a client. Everything is on a client, so no interface of server, so it is called client side scripting. Next is a server side scripting. Okay, next is a server side scripting. In this scripting, what happened? We store our script on a web server. We store a script on a web server. We open the script on client. The data or file which is stored on a web server, we can open it on client. Okay, means storage on server. we open it on client, we execute it on server, we process, but actual the file executes on server. Okay, means when we send the request to process, means when we feed the data for calculation, we use client to feed the data, but once the data is feeded, the data transferred to server for execution, server execute or server calculate and gives the result, that result displays on a client. So execution and storage, both the things are done on server. Execution and storage, first storing and then execution, so both these functions we are doing on a server, and we process and we can see the result on client. Okay, we can process means we can give data or enter data to calculate from client, and after entering that data, when the web server or server execute that or calculate that data and then gives the result, which is that result we can see on client. So in server side scripting, there is an interface between client and server. There is a data transmission between client and server. Each and every time the client send the request to server, and as per the request of client, server process that request, gives as a response. Okay, so server client configuration is a use in a server side scripting. Okay, so what we can say, the first point is in server side script resides on server. Okay, it activated by client, but it execute on web server. So these things are very important, which differentiate client side scripting and server side scripting. Okay, here you can see the difference that in client side scripting, the script resides on client, whereas in a web server, server side scripting, script resides on web server. Right? Here it execute, or in client side scripting, it executes on client, means it run on client, whereas in server side scripting, the script executes on web server, means on server. Okay, even though it executes on server, the client has to activate it. To activate it means to transfer the data. Means suppose we have to do some calculation, we have to feed some values, and feeding of values we can do by client. Okay, means if you want to do addition, the code of addition is stored on a web server. The code of addition is stored on a web server. If you want to transfer the values, you can enter it on a client, so that those values are transferred to the web server, and web server execute and gives the desired result, and that result always displayed on the client. Okay, so these things are always happen in a server side scripting. Okay, so these are the differences, these are the main differences between the client side and scripting, server side scripting. So we will see more differences later on. Okay, so first of all, these two things we have to know, that how the client side scripting execute and how the server side script executes. Okay, clear? Now, now we will see the one by one, the each and every difference in a deeply. Okay, what the difference state, that what comes inside, that everything we are going to study now. So difference between the server side scripting and client side scripting, this question can be asked for 3 to 4 marks. Okay, maximum time this question comes for 4 marks. Okay, your 4 differences you have to give. In your examination, you can't write differences in table format, because they are providing you a text area, they are providing you a paragraph area. In that paragraph area, you can't draw any table. So you have to write the differences in a point wise. That is the first point, in which one difference you can specify of both the server side as well as in client side. In second point, you can difference give difference both of both the entities. In third point, fourth point, in this type you can explain four points one by one below other. Okay, so you can't create a table in that text area. So in the examination, you can't create a table and write the points one by one. Okay, so here we will see the difference between server side and client side scripting more clearly. Okay, now the first point, see the first point, what the first point says. Okay, this is the first point. Server side scripting is used at the back end. Server side scripting is used at the back end. So this is a very important content, very important text. That is, a server side script is always used at the back end, and in opposite to it, the client side always used at the front end. Now the question comes in our mind that what is the back end and what is the front end? Okay, we understood that this server side script is always used at the back end, and client side script always used at the front end. But what do you mean the back end and front end? Yes, anybody knows the difference between the front end and back end? Yes, can you tell me? Yes, try to answer me. What is the difference between back end and front end, or what do you mean by back end and front end? Just let me know who knows the answer. Yes, let me know the answer. What is the back end and what is the front end? Means what we can do in a back end and what we can do in a front end. Yes, let us know who is going to correct answer. Yes, my question is that what do you mean by the back end and what do you mean by the front end? Just give in a two words what is the answer. Yes, is there Yogesh, Amol? Yes, you can try. Jessica, Rishikesh. Yes, what you can say about the back end and the front end? Amol, yes, Sonika, Mahima, Apeksha. Yes, give me answer. Depression, Joshi, are you depressed? Okay, so depression, sorry. Okay, you are not depressed. Presentation layer. Presentation layer. What are you talking about? No, Joshi, your these words are not related to anything. Presentation and data. Google search. No, this is not the right answer. I just want to know what is the back end and what is the front end. Joshi is trying to give answer. He's talking with me or other. I don't understand. Yes, Amol. Where are you, Josia? Yes, let me know what is the back end and what is the front end. These two things are very important when you go to design any project, when you go to design uh, any applications, then these two things you have to use in your project or the application. Okay, without these two things, we can't do any application. If you want to go to develop any Android application, if you want to go to develop any web application, if you want to do any project, then these things are very important. You have to use it. So each IT engineer or each IT students has to know these two things, that the back end and the front end. What is the back end and what is the front end? Rutik is saying something. Back end, it is the term used for the behind the scene activity that happens when performing any action on a website. Backend is the term used for the behind the scene activities that happen with performing any action on a website. Very good. And what about the front end? Front end, again you have to search it. Yes, Ritik, back end, very good. He's giving answers something like this, that something the behind the scene, the activities. Okay, what about the front end? Yes, Ritik, you give me answer. Back end is right, something that behind the scene, that you can say the back end. Okay, and what about the front end? I think is it taking so much time to type, I think. Okay, Ritik, tell me the example of the back end. Yes, tell me the example of back end. I'll explain rest of the things. Just to give me the example of the back end. Yes, anybody of you, can you give me the answer that what we can consider as a back end, or what is the example of back end, or tell me what is the example of front end? Any one of these? Yes, yes, fast. Amol, Yogesh. I think Yogesh is not present today. Yes, Abhishek. Abhishek is a keeping mum from start to end, not talking a single word, just a present sir, that's all. Yes, Ratan, what do you say? Amol, okay, so nobody's trying to give answer. So see, backend means what and front end means what? Backend, Java and Python. Swarup is saying backend means Java and Python, and front end is a web development, is the practice. Ritik is saying something that front end is a end, web development is the practice of converting data. No, in a simply thing I can say, see, in a simply thing, now listen here, listen carefully. Now you will understand, only two examples I will give you, one example for back end and one example for front end. Then you will realize what is the back end and what is the front end. Okay, now what are these examples? See, in backend you can say database. In front end you can say forms, right? In front end we can say forms, in back end we can say database. Now you are in 12th standard and you are going to fill a form. You are going to fill a form for JEE or NEET. You're filling a form. While you're filling a form, you can see only forms on a client. Is it right? Can you see the database? Means what are the different tables stored on a server? What are the different data stored on that server? Or in that table? Can you see the tables? You can't see those tables. You can only see the forms. You can fill the information in the form, and when you submit it, at that time the filled information in the form transferred to the database stored on a server. Okay, here a user can or operator can see only the forms. Operator can see only the forms but he can't see the database, but he can't see the tables. Okay, so whatever works behind the scene, means the thing which user can't see, that is nothing but database. That is nothing but backend. And the user which can see at client, it means forms that user can see, user can fit the information in form. Whatever he see on a client computer, whatever he see on computer screen, that is nothing but a front end. Okay, so front end means the form design in a JavaScript. Front end means the prompt information, means whatever the method prompt is doing, that things come in front end. And whatever the calculation done behind the scene, that is called back end. So for better understanding, I'm giving this two example. Backend nothing but the database or the table stored in a database. Any user can't see the tables because it works behind the scene. But user can see the form. User can see his content open in a form. Okay, but he can't see other database, other content, other tables, other columns in the database. Okay, so whatever he can't see, that is a backend, and whatever he can see, that is called front end. Okay, so when you work on any project, at that time you have to decide that in which department you want to work. You can't do both these things. You can't do your career in a backend as well as front end. You have to decide that you should work in a front end or the back end. When you are going to do a practice in a backend, when you go to study in a backend, then you have to study Oracle, you have to study database, you have to study SQLite, SQL servers, all these things you have to study in a backend. So database, those things, or the web server means server side scripting, that you have to study in a backend. Okay, but in the front end means just like a JavaScript. Okay, JavaScript, AngularJS, Vue.js, React, all these things, the framework and libraries, all things comes in front end. Okay, in right side, there are given some unknown words like unknown tools like AngularJS, Vue.js, React, all these things come in the front end. Okay, all these things come in a front end, because here we are going to develop or see the contents on a client screen. Okay, so whatever we can see on a client screen, that is called front end, and whatever we store, whatever we do something on a server, that is called back end. So database is always stored on a server, the information is always stored on a server, and we are accessing those information from client. Okay, so server side scripting is used at the back end. Server side scripting is used to access the database. Server side scripting used to access the server. Right? So these things you have to keep in mind for writing the first difference. What is the difference? Server side always works at the back end. Server side script always works at the back end, whereas client side script always work at the front end. Okay, just a minute. Just a minute. Somebody is trying to annotate. Just a minute. Hmm. Okay, now the first difference is that back end and front end. So client side scripting always used at the front end, and server side script is used at the back end. Okay, now second thing, source code stored on a server is not visible, it means you can say that it is a hidden. Okay, means whatever we have written in the backend side, whatever code we have written on the server side, that source code we can't see. It is not visible. Okay, to transfer the data filled in a form, how the data transfer, what code we have written to transfer, that we can't see. Okay, we can see only the client side script. Okay, so source code is not visible. The source code, here source code is not visible, or it is a hidden. Whereas the client side scripting, which is used at the front end, gives you all the code or all the data, all the code or all the data that you have written on a client side script. Okay, so this client side script is used at front end, and the server side script is always used at back end. Okay, so this is the main and the first difference, says that. Okay, where the source code is not visible in the first point, it is also given that the source code is not visible or it is hidden in a server side scripting. Whereas when you see the client side scripting, it is not it is visible for all users. Okay, in server side scripting, source code is not visible. In client side scripting, the source code is visible. Okay, so what you can say, the server side scripting is a more secure, so that you can say server side scripting is a more secure and client side scripting is not secure. Why it is not secure? Because any user can see the code written in client side script. Any user can see the code written for particular use in a client side script, but we can't see server side scripting. Okay, for an example, an example I'm showing you. I just redirect you on the screen. Okay, can you see the one file, one page is open over here, that is reactjs.org, the site I have open over here. Can you see this? Yes, can you see the file, a web page open on screen, that is reactjs.org? Yes, give me answer in a chat box so that I will go ahead. Okay, so this is a page, web page or the website having name reactjs.org. Okay, now if I want to see the code behind this web page, if I want to see the code behind the web page, I just have to open here more tools and developer tool. Now can you see the code written at right hand side panel? Yes, in the right hand side pane, can you see the code? Yes, give me answer. In right hand side, can you see the code? Yes, let me know. Can you see the code, or either you can see only the content on a web page? Yes, let me know. Okay, so these things is nothing but the client side code, client side script. Okay, because see the script is written here, script, right? So script is written here means everything written in a JavaScript, everything written on a client side that we can see just by clicking over here. You can see the content. This is the content. Here you can see the content behind this. Here you can see the content behind this. So everything you can see, whatever written for JavaScript that you can see over here. JS is the extension given here. JS means the JavaScript. So JavaScript related all information you can see over here. Okay, so these things we can see easily. So we can't hide any code written in a JavaScript because it is a client side script. It is not secure, so anyone can see the code behind whatever you have written for. Means suppose you have written a code for menu, then you can see it in this scripting. Okay, means we can't hide this code. So JavaScript is a non-secured scripting language, less secure scripting language you can say. But if you want to see the code of server, then you have to log in on server. If you can't log in on server, then you can't see the content written inside the web server. So we have not authentication, we have not authority to log in on a server because for that we require some authentication or credentials, some user IDs and passwords we required. If we require user ID and password to log in on a web page or log in on a web server, then we can't log in it without it. So if we can't log in web server, then we can't see the code written on a web server. Okay, so the data or a web, the content or the code written on a web server, that is a server side script, we can't see those. So we can say that the web server scripting or website server side scripting is always a secured compared to client side scripting. Okay, now you understood the difference. Now you understood the first difference. What it says that server side scripting is used at the back end, and here front end is a client side scripting we are using at the front end. And in a server side scripting, the source code is not visible or hidden, whereas in a client side script we can see the script, we can see the script, we can see the code behind any functionality which is used in that website. Okay, so we can say that the server side scripting is a more secure than the client side scripting. Okay, so we can say that the server side scripting is a more secure compared to client side scripting. Okay, so this is the first difference. Now what you have to note in the difference, the first thing is backend, second thing is not visible, code is not visible, you can say code is not visible. And in client side you can say front end, it is front end category, it is a user can see the code. And next is called more secure or unsecure. Okay, these three things are enclosed or embedded in a one point or first point. You can also write these three different points too. Okay, means suppose you're not getting that answer in examination, then you can write these three separate points, you will get marks. Okay, the server side scripting is used at the back end, client side is used at the front end. Code is not visible and server side scripting. Code is visible on server side in client side scripting. Okay, these 2 points. Then third point is a server side scripting is a more secure, client side scripting is a less secure. हो गए आपके 3 marks मिल गए. Okay, this what this says the three points are enclosed here in a first point, so you can write these 3 points separately also. Okay, now we will come on the second point. This is about the first point, then we will go on the second point. The second point says that when a server-side script is processed processed, it communicate to the server, as against the client-side scripting does not need any server interaction. We have already studied this part. Okay, what it says? It says that there is a no interaction of server in client-side scripting. There is a no interaction of server in client-side scripting, and server-side scripting is a processed and communicate with the client. Okay, means in server-side scripting, there must be the interaction between the two computers, that is the server and client. Whereas in a client-side scripting, there is no interaction of server. Okay, so this is the second difference you can say. Now we will come on third point. The client-side scripting language involves language such as HTML5 and JavaScript. This is an examples given of the client-side scripting and server-side scripting. So what we can use in a client-side scripting, HTML5 and JavaScript, these two things we are using in a client-side scripting. So examples are, examples. Here are examples. Okay. So this next point is the client-side scripting language. The client-side scripting language involves language such as HTML5, JavaScript, whereas in contrast, in server-side scripting, we are using PHP, ASP.NET, Ruby, Cold Fusion, Python, C Sharp, etc. Okay, so whatever the programming languages, those we are using to write a program on a server side, those programming script are PHP, ASP.NET, Ruby, Cold Fusion, Python, C Sharp. Okay, so these things we are using for server side scripting, and JavaScript and HTML. These two things we are using for client side scripting. Okay, so I mark these two things. Okay, these are the examples. HTML5, then JavaScript are the example of a client side scripting. Here is a PHP, ASP.NET, Ruby, Cold Fusion, Python, and C Sharp. Okay, so these are comes under server side scripting. Okay, so this is the third difference, that examples of client side scripting and server side scripting. Now next point. Now fourth point says that server side scripting is useful in customizing the web page and implement the dynamic changes in the website. Okay, so here is the difference is this difference is a given, but I don't think that this is a difference. The great merit for this point is not considerable, because the server side scripting, what is saying that server side scripting is useful in customizing the web page. So if we want to customize a web page, if you want to customize a web page, we can also use JavaScript, because by using JavaScript we can change the menu's color, we can change the foreground color of menu, we can change the background color of menu. That is a possible by JavaScript. So you can't say this is applicable for server side scripting only. So what I want to say that this is not a great you can see the great example of or main point you can write for the that a considerable point for write the difference between the client side and server side scripting. If you want to write, you can write, but I will not suggest you, because it is not a you can say it is not a perfect point to difference both client side as well as server side. So it is also here given that server side scripting is useful in customizing the web page as well as to implement the dynamic changes in the website. Dynamic changes we can also apply by using JavaScript. Okay, so it is a controversy about this point. So let it be. I'm explaining you. Conversely, the client side scripts are generally used. The client side script are generally used for validation purpose and effectively minimize the load to the server. Okay, so this can you say that this thing you can say that where we can use the client side JavaScript and where we can use the PHP type server side to manipulate the database, to manipulate the database, to execute the calculation or to do calculation, we are using server side scripting. To manipulate the database, to do the calculations, we can use server side script. Whereas to check the entered data, that is a data validation, to check the entered data as well as to give the flexibility, or you can say that to dynamic, to apply dynamic effect to the web page, we can use client side script. Okay, means we have studied that JavaScript is used for the data validation and to give the dynamic effect to the web page. Okay, so it is also used dynamic effect. It is used to give responsiveness to the website. It is also used to give flexibility of the website. It is also used to give the date and time manipulation. It is also used for calculation. So these things we can do by using JavaScript. Okay, but using server side scripting, we can do database manipulation and calculations on server. Okay, so this difference you can consider. Now I will come on the fifth point. Fifth point says that the special software, web server software is required to execute server side script. Whereas in client side script, we require two things, either a browser and a notepad or any text editor. You can write any code in a text editor, you can execute in a browser. So we require two main software for client side scripting, that is a Internet Explorer or any Google Chrome like a browser, and second thing is any editor like a WordPad or Notepad. Okay, two things we require. But when you go to write a code in a server side scripting, then you required a server tool like IIS, Apache server, these type of server you require to execute the code. Okay, IIS means Internet Information Service. This type of server we are using in a Windows. Apache, HTTPD, HTTPAD, this type of server we are using for Linux category of operating system. Okay, so these things we are using in a web server software. So we require something, we require some softwares to execute server side scripting, but we don't require any type of software because Notepad and WordPad are inbuilt in a Windows, and browser is also inbuilt in Windows. So we don't require to download, or we don't require to install this software from outside. Okay, so for client side scripting, we don't require we don't require any software to execute the code from outside. But when you want to do a code, when you want to write a program in a web server, that time you require some tools to execute that code on a server. Okay, so this is the difference. This is the difference, you can say the considerable difference in as a fifth point. Okay, so I can mark over here, these are the differences. Means softwares required to execute, and here only web browser is required. Okay, here softwares are required to execute, here only web browser is required. Okay, so two things are considerable in the fifth point. Okay, so here we have finished our the differences. That the five differences are given, and in these five differences, these differences are asked for the 4 marks. Okay, if it asks for the 4 marks, then as I explained in the first point, you can consider 3 points over there in a first point. Okay, you can write maximum 6 to 7 points by using these all 5 points which are given over here. Means if you write any 8 points, then you will get full marks. 4 out of 4, you will the examiner will not reduce a single marks or half marks too. Okay, try to write the maximum points. Try to write the answers in the maximum, because you have a lot of time to do your work, because 2.5 hours are given for your examination, and hardly in a 1 or 1.5 hour you will complete your paper, because all things are options. Means you have to select options and you have to write answers. Only thing is that two programs and three questions are asked, which you have to type. Okay, other all things are just to click over the options and just go ahead. Okay, so you can finish your paper in only 1.5 hour, because the one student was the night when we started our first batch. I think it was in 2008. Okay, in 2008 we have started our first batch. At that time, Abhijit or Aniket Nevalkar was a student at that time, and I know very well that he wind up his paper in 1.5 hour, and he got 98 marks. Okay, in 1.5 hour he got 98 marks, and that record is never broken by any students up to this batch. Okay, so, and I'm not suggesting you to do all these things that he did, because he was brilliant. You are also brilliant, but you don't copy this thing. You take your time, but write correct answers. Okay, so here are total 5 differences. We have seen the 5 differences. Now, do you know these are the extra things? These things you never ask in your examination. Just for your sake of knowledge, I'm telling you. See, to develop any website, or if you want to become a website developer, if you want to do career in a website development, then what you have to know? HTML you have to know, HTML5 you have to know, you must know JavaScript, and you must know CSS. Okay, these three things make you a basic web developer. Basic web developer. Nowadays, the competitions is on, and if you want to get in a competition, then the advanced features you must have. So what the advanced features are? The framework and libraries. Okay, these are the advanced features are given by some companies, just like Google gave you AngularJS, Twitter gave you React, and one private company is given Vue.js. Okay, so these frameworks are already developed. These frameworks are created by some companies, and because of these frameworks, it is very easy to develop a website front end easily and with more and more advanced features. Why? Because it makes easy. Why it makes easy? Because of these things. Library. Why this make easy? Because of libraries. Why it makes easy? Because of framework. Now, what are these things? What are the library and what is the framework? Because we know the library of books, nothing else, right? So what is a library in a computer language? What do you mean framework in a computer language? These three things are very important if you want to join any company as a web developer. Then One of these things you must know. Either AngularJS you have to know, Vue.js or React. I will suggest you go for either AngularJS or React, because these two things are competitive to each other compared to Vue.js. AngularJS is developed by Google, and Google is a most most developed company nowadays, and it will remain for next 10 to 15 years. Okay, so we must know all things about the Google. So AngularJS is a framework. AngularJS gives you the structure to design a web page easily. AngularJS gives you a structure to design. So if you know about the Bootstrap, Bootstrap is a framework. By using that framework, we can develop a website very easily and very quickly. You don't have to write all the codes, because some codes are already fed in the AngularJS, some codes are already fed in a Bootstrap. You have to just use those keywords, use those fixed words, and you have to write so many things, or you have to process so many things in that few words or few keywords, the fixed words. Okay, so framework is a structure, and in that structure you can place your website. In that structure you can place your image, you can place the content, you can place the audio, video, whatever content you want to place. You can create a framework and you can place over in that framework. Okay, so nowadays, because of framework, to design a website is a quite easy way. No need of learn all the codes. Without any code you can develop any web application. Without any code you can develop any Android application. Okay, so why? Because of only framework and libraries, those are provided nowadays. Libraries means what? Libraries means some functions which are already defined. Library means classes which are already defined. Libraries means such a function, such a code, such as instructions are stored in AngularJS, Vue.js or React. And because of those libraries, it makes it easy for us to develop any dynamic website quickly and in with less efforts. Okay, so these three things you must know, that is the AngularJS, Vue.js, React. So to know only JavaScript, CSS and HTML5 will not make you a web developer nowadays. So you must know these things, you must get knowledge about these things to develop a dynamic website or the advanced websites. Okay, so AngularJS, first of all, see AngularJS. It is a JavaScript based open source front end web framework developed mainly for single page application. Okay, means suppose you want to design a single page application, means only a web page, and on which you want to interact with the user, on which you want to do some dynamic processing, then you have to use the AngularJS. Similarly, if you want to create a user interface like a form, then Vue.js can be used. Okay, now just a minute, I will show you how the AngularJS. Okay, I'll show you how the AngularJS displays. Okay, so can you see on screen AngularJS? This is the logo of AngularJS. This is the logo of AngularJS. And if you want to know more about the AngularJS, then here is a site angularjs.org. Okay, here you can see the more content about it. You can know more about the AngularJS. Okay, you can download the AngularJS from here, and how we can use or what we can do with AngularJS, those all things are given here with their videos. Okay, how we can use the AngularJS, what is the usefulness of AngularJS, all things are given here. Similarly, Vue.js is also given here. So here is this is the logo of Vue.js. This is a other framework, you can say, by using which we can develop a program, a website, a web page. What we can do by using this, all these things are given on the website. The website name is vuejs.org. Okay, the website name is vuejs.org. Here you will get all these things related to this framework. And similar to these two things, here is the React. Okay, here you can see this logo of React. Okay, using the React, we can do the same thing like a AngularJS, like a Vue.js. Okay, but there is a more competition between the two things, the React and AngularJS. So one of these two you have to choose for your framework and libraries. Okay, to design advanced and flexible and dynamic website, you have to know one of these two. So this is the logo of React. You will get the detailed information about the React on reactjs.org. Here all tutorials are also given. How to use the React.js is also given, so you can study it from reactjs.org. Okay, so these are your out of syllabus. It is not included in your syllabus. Just for sake of knowledge, I explain all these things. Okay, so this is about AngularJS, Vue.js, and React.js. Okay, now we end this session here. Okay, here we have finished one difference between the client side and scripting and server side scripting. From next session, we are going to study some advanced programming. In revision session, we have studied if structure, that is a conditional statement. The next statements or the next part is very important because it is related to programming. Okay, now next part is only related to programming. What are the theoretical parts in advanced JavaScript that we have studied yet now? Okay, now we are going to study from next session the whatever we have going to study, that all things related to programming. So don't miss any session. So don't miss any session. And if you are not getting a proper network, then I have created a blog and I shared a link of that blog on our WhatsApp group. Okay, you can go through that. All videos, this list of all videos are given, a link of videos are given over there. Okay, if you couldn't attend that lecture, or if you that lectures got missed, then you can refer those list of videos for your study. Okay, whenever you get network, proper network, then you open it in your browser and you can study those you have missed. Okay, so today I'm ending this session. So we will meet on, okay, we will meet on alternate days. So today is a Tuesday, Thursday. So we'll meet on Thursday, 3 p.m. So bye bye.